Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Emergent. It's been a while. Happy to be with you again here in the studio, bathed in the beautiful lights and cameras of this great space that I and the team created late in, I believe it was 2024, and that we have kept alive and hot with great conversations and great exploration of the implications of the confirmation of non-human intelligence, that we are being engaged by an intelligent form of life, whatever that ends up being, and that we have work to do to figure out what that means for the human species. How do we navigate the realities of this engagement and begin to equip ourselves as a species, as an international community, and as citizens, as individual human beings, as a part of this engagement, to interact and interface with what may be a larger environment or system of life that extends beyond our world, and certainly our human frame on reality. It's great to be here again with you all. And I know I've been a little quiet recently, and it's in no part or in no way due to me being disengaged or not very active. In fact, I've got so many irons in the fire and so many pressing projects that have needed my attention. I just simply have not had time to get back in the studio and record more episodes with you all. But it is great to be here. Just before I kick off, I want to say a big thank you to the YouTube members out there who are supporting Emergent and helping me bring these quality conversations into the public domain. It's $5 a month if you'd like to join, and I'll continue offering part 2 exclusive episodes and early releases as well of pre-recorded episodes, and basically just a way for you to support the show and add energy to the pot. Also want to thank those who are supporting Emergent on Patreon. That's a kind of a deeper way to support me and the team here and getting this moving at a critical time in the discourse on UAP and potential NHI. So thank you, Patreon supporters. And then also a shout out to those on Forerunner, my community platform for those who are out on the front lines of the phenomenon, endeavoring to engage their full set of human capabilities to understand what this phenomenon is, what its intelligence is, what its potential intentions are, and how we should be responding as engaged citizens to that reality. Here on Forerunner, I have my course, Decoding NHI Intent, which is not fully up there yet because I've gotten sidetracked with, again, those very important and urgent initiatives, which I'll mention in a moment. But 410 people here on the site engaging in this content, discussing how we best can respond to this emerging or emergent new reality of NHI. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. A little bit about me. Yes, I have been so very busy. In addition to being a father, to relocating my family recently, I have also been working very hard to bring UFOevidence.com to public launch, to bring its methodology to a point of readiness to be engaged by the public in a beta form. I've also been developing a coalition roadmap for UAP detection and tracking based on the very successful UAPsummit.org. And I just want to put a shout out to the team who put on that event. It took 15 people to host our first online conference at the Human Institute, UAPsummit.org. Some of the lectures there, which we just put on YouTube. We had a channel with no followers, really no footprint. Some of those presentations have over 100,000 views and received that within weeks of being posted. So definitely strong appetite for that new front line, which, yes, it came to mind in an insight, actually. I was sitting in Barnes & Noble in the midst of that late 2024 New Jersey drone flap and all of the confusion about what's up there. And some of it looked very prosaic, a lot of misidentifications, but also very large SUV-sized craft loitering for long periods, requiring energy and, technologies that we are not aware exist. And then other anomalous phenomena up there as well, which we heard reported. And I said to myself, is there anyone who can technically detect what's up in the skies? Can we get technology-derived data into the public domain about what is up there to go beyond all of this government stonewalling? That it's all FAA approved. There's nothing anomalous, nothing to see here. And then others from, local and state authorities coming out saying they're seeing things all the way from bizarre orbs moving at high speed to craft motherships, quote unquote, deploying sub-units of themselves, smaller craft from them, right? Wild claims from acting government at the state level saying that they're seeing UAP go in and out of the ocean, right? So all of that, and then the social networks rage with all sorts of footage, some of it obviously manufactured and fake, thus the nexus with AI and the challenge that AI poses to credible UAP information. And I said to myself, who's out there? Who can detect UAP? And it turns out there are no fewer than 10 groups internationally who have been out in the field or are right now. And I brought them all together at uapsummit.org, and we held a fantastic conference basically defining this new line in the fight for disclosure, articulating this ethos that data drives disclosure, transparency drives trust, and if trustworthy information can be made available to the public, informed decisions will follow. That is the fundamental ethos that I hold in the Human Institute and at UAP Summit, and we're working now to bring those groups into a coalition-based roadmap to field deploy a new set of capabilities and put the data in front of you. No more secreting away into the corporate space, into the national security space. The data has to be in the public domain, and it has to be validated, scientifically usable data, and that's what we're working on there. I'm also working on my book on the intent of the UAP phenomenon. Very excited about that. And I'm also beginning advanced degree coursework on UAP in the context of international relations, basically tackling UAP as an emergent challenge for global affairs, taking it beyond the conversation on the podcast and into the academic and institutional space. Working really in my inspiration is to elevate UAP from a fringe curiosity, a cultural fascination, potential national security risk to something much, much greater. It's a human security challenge. It is a truly humanitarian issue, and it has to be elevated above all of these other interests that are currently even aggregating the conversation, containing the dialogue, secreting it away, or undermining it actively. It has to blow out of that space, and there is the potential for that now. And I do think we are living in potentially extraordinary times when it comes to UAP and disclosure, and that requires potentially extraordinary measures, one of which we are here today to talk to you about, which is a transparent, interactive methodology for scoring UFO claims, data, in the context of this kind of basket word, evidence. We'll get into what is evidence as compared to data as we go on. But we've had 2 rounds of US government releases of UAP-related information. I'll just call it that. I'm not even sure it is data at this point, but it is information. And we have the Brazilian government, just I believe yesterday, released a round of national UFO-related files, slightly ahead of schedule. That's up online. We've got a press conference tomorrow on the steps of Capitol Hill, hosted by James Fox, Leslie Kean, with David Grush speaking, and other congressional representatives on the need for urgent transparency on this issue. We have Disclosure Day, the Spielberg film that airs, I believe, this Friday. I have a seat at the theater. Do you? Don't worry, I wouldn't be there the opening weekend. Let the craze subside. But you know, regardless of the narrative of the film, this is where a very large number of people, millions potentially, may go from possibilities to probabilities. And I just want to throw up my site here. And there we go. Go down to my original framework, okay? That in the cognitive examination, the cognitive processing of the UFO reality, we are knowingly or unknowingly engaged in a procedural process, a flow. And actually, step 0, you'll see this in my course on Forerunner, is impossibility. And that's where the bulk of humanity lives right now, that the reality that we're being engaged by technologies and potential biologies of non-Earth origin, and certainly of non-human nature, is just impossible. It's the evidential requirement is off the charts, right? And that's why the evidence, many would say, does not exist. There's no good evidence for UFOs. Well, we're about to refute that today, my guest and I. and the site that we've developed. But you know, these films, these government releases, though they may lack substantive evidence, they are still impactful because they advance people from impossibility to possibility. And this Friday, millions of people will be landing on possibility. This could be a reality. The question then is, what moves them down the road to examine the more probable explanations for what's happening and gets them out of the miasma of every possible explanation that the universe might throw our way? There are more probable explanations based on the evidence. And then what's going to get them to make an assessment? Because if we don't make an assessment, you could also use the word hypothesis. Then all the data we have means nothing. All the evidence that comes out means nothing. What are we even asking for then from the Pentagon? It's not going to actually get us to form a logical assessment that creates the foundation for action and response. Because ultimately, if we don't act and respond to this as a species, where do we end up with it? Well, we may not be the humans we were, right? Due to all sorts of different factors at play. And so this is fundamentally about the human journey, about our expansion into a larger environment of life, a cosmos of life, and to retain and keep close our human values and to steward and cherish those as we go into that environment and express them there. In my mind, that's the bigger picture and the larger goal in all of this. So, great that we're here together. And thank you again for being here on the episode live. Today is not about whether we believe or disbelieve UFOs are real. It's really about how we evaluate the information surrounding it. And the current discourse is driven and in fact somewhat captured in this dynamic of allegations and claims, testimony, driving speculation, speculation driving excitement, excitement expanding people into possibilities, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But then basically the discourse aggregates around novel theorizing. People have theories, and they're all based on largely speculation. There's not much of a look at the core data and what it indicates. There's no bounding of possibilities to probabilities. And we have this thing I've called, which is the possibility parade, which is that everyone stands up their float and drives it around the block. And we say, woohoo, look at me. I've got this notion of whatever about NHI origin, the universe, cosmos, consciousness, simulation theory, etc. And the most exciting theory takes the day. And then when that's dissatisfying, we all go back to the social networks and await the newest release of something from the authorities out there. And we re-engage in false authority syndrome. And it just blows my mind that everyone at this moment is crowding around the feet of the current US administration and the United States Department of War and the US government's intelligence agencies for the credible confirmation of what is real in the universe. As if this administration, that Department of War, and the CIA itself are responsible for that, are capable of delivering it, and have not demonstrated their intent to do the opposite, which they have, multiple junctures. And here we are crowding at the feet, right? Knocking on the door of the Pentagon once again. We are not engaging our cognitive process to examine the data that already exists, identify what data is strong as evidence and what is weak, and then to go figure out the evidence we need. And then here's my final empowerment to you all. And I'm not joking about it because this is where the bulk of my professional energy goes. It's to go get the data, to actually go and talk to abductees, to go into the field and detect anomalous events, to generate scientifically valid data that engages the international science community. That's how grand the challenge is. That's my moonshot challenge to you all. And there's none but the citizens who are going to advance it. That much I know. Academia has had its chance. Government institutions have had their chance. The credibility crowd out there who are truly in a credibility corral because they cannot articulate a revolutionary theory or be out on the fringe professionally too much, because then they take that credibility hit. They lose funding. They lose their stature or their status at universities, etc. And I respect that risk, but it is a credibility corral. And so we are 70 years into this. And my belief is that it is the engaged citizen who will cause a fundamental breakthrough. Not the only breakthrough, but it is, without that, I do not trust breakthroughs at the official level only. So that's why we're all here. Thank you so much for being a part of that. Today, we're going to look at how we should be regarding UFO evidence. What makes that evidence strong? What makes it weak? How do we evaluate these documents and this heavily redacted media coming out of the government right now? And what evidence do we actually need to pursue to substantiate the reality and the activity and ultimately the intent of this phenomenon? With me today is friend and guest Ben de la Fontaine. Ben, welcome to Emergent.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here. I'll read, Ben, your bio and just introduce you to everyone for the first time. Benjamin de la Fontaine is a South African research entomologist specializing in insect taxonomy and ecology. He is involved in international research programs focused on developing biological control agents for globally invasive species and studying native pollinators in Africa to safeguard ecosystems and agriculture. In 2025, he joined the Human Institute, my team, where he contributes his scientific and academic background to furthering UAP research. He is currently involved in the development of the scoring methodology and case library for UFOevidence.com. Ben, fantastic to have you on the team. You are an instrumental part of the picture here of how this site and this platform came into being. And your expertise and scientific depth have been invaluable. So great to have you here on the team and talk through UFOevidence.com, which just launched, I think, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we've gone live now with almost or just over 100 cases. And some of them are narratives, and some of them are very rich in data. And most of it's drawn from the historical record, the substantial work of UFO investigative bodies in the past. And more recently, we are beginning to analyze the data coming afresh out of the US government under the Pursue program.
Yes, we are. And that's why we're here today. We're going to look at 2 cases developed from the Pursue program that are on UFOE. And then we're going to live score with everyone a brand new case, new to the site. So all those watching, this is interactive time. So I want to encourage you to have the chat on YouTube live open. That's where I'll be looking right now. Great to see your names there. Questions, put them in the chat. That's how we'll do Q&A. We're going to walk through this site, this methodology, and just walk you through literally how to use it. I want you to put any questions or confusions in the chat there. And then also toward the end of our scoring interactive, we're going to see if you would be interested in submitting your score to everyone else. And we'll show you exactly how to do that. It'll be by pasting a link in the chat. So keep the chat open. You might also want to open a new browser window and go to UFOevidence.com so that you can navigate alongside us. Excellent. Well, Ben and I have quite a lot here. So let me start to walk into it. I wanted to just briefly, Ben, talk with you about the evidence challenge when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. So we can take the site off the screen for now and let's just talk about what do we have? What do we know? What do we not know? And what is the evidence as it stands today, as it's accrued over the last 70 plus years? And I know, Ben, you're an astute observer of the UFO discourse. You're watching it constantly. I am. So I'm curious, where do you think it is moving forward in a good way? Where do you think it is stuck or obstructed? And how do we deal with this question of evidence?
Okay. I think to start with, we have, for a long time actually, more so than I think people realize, already had a lot of the data that people expect and reasonably demand to move the needle, move the standard of their opinion to, okay, there's actually something going on here, possibly something quite remarkable. And I think that UFOE is just a way to put all of that relevant information in one place. A lot of these cases have been handpicked because they are rich in the kinds of data that would convince people that there is something to look at. I think what's really been lacking until recently are, I think, the kinds of the kinds of data, or maybe more accurately, the kinds of media that will get the public's attention. People want credible evidence that they can see with their own eyes. They want the pictures and they want the video. And they want someone in authority to come out and say, yes, this is the real deal. You won't be ridiculed for believing that this is real. And that, I think, is the most significant change that we're starting to see come out right now. So I think disclosures by governments, not just the US government, governments of Brazil and Chile have made significant contributions already, going out ahead of the US government even, and given us something to work with. I think that's the best way to summarize. We actually have a lot to work with. This is not time to be, like you said, Reed, sitting at the feet of the US government begging for more. Let's look at what we've got. Let's look at what independent researchers have already generated, because they have been digging on the behalf of the global public for decades, and not always getting the credit for it that they deserve. And I think it is time for the whole world to start recognizing that there is that information there, and start analyzing it with a critical mind and an open mind, and start entertaining it, considering what it might actually mean.
Yeah, great stuff. I have up on screen here, this is off my website, just a brief summary of some of the data sets, some of the big ones that are out there that are publicly available. You can go download the CUFOS HumCat UFOCat database. I'm sorry, the UFOCat database, the MUFON Project Aquarius. I've been in touch with the team there about access as well to that. The Rosales database was not one I knew about until I began to become more aware of the data behind the abduction phenomenon, as well as the HumCat database. The Newfork database, often cited, and yes, it is a challenging data set in terms of its quality and consistency. And there are many others. There was an anonymous PDF circulated parallel to one of the UFO hearings. I'm sure we can get a link to it. I've got a link to it right in front of me. I'll post that in the chat when I have a second. That has hundreds and hundreds of publicly gathered case histories on UAP encounters. Some of them are very impactful. And these are scattered all over the internet. They're on Reddit subreddits. They're in forums. They're in podcasts. They're on news, TV, and radio channels and shows. They're everywhere. There is so much testimonial data. And some would just discount this as useless. And it is very interesting to me that in the court of law, we accord high value to testimonial accounts of things that have happened to people. In fact, you can be prosecuted using testimony alone in most court systems. But on this issue, I think because the fundamental claim of this being UFO or a flying saucer or an extraterrestrial entity is so outside the box of our current frame of reality that the expectation that the data should have is just extraordinary. The evidentiary threshold is so high. Well, that could change at any moment, right? And that is one of the powers of official confirmation, is that it will suddenly lower the bar. People will start listening to each other again, just like they do on other human-on-human issues. And the data will have new salience in that moment. And we are, to your point, Ben, swimming in hundreds of thousands of literal incidents involving humans and alleged phenomena, structured craft, in many cases, entities related to those craft. And how do we sort through this? This is the question. And I often think back to something Dr. Gary Nolan has spoken of many times. And I interviewed Dr. Gary Nolan about 6 months ago on the Human Institute's Investigating NHI series. Important lecture. Recommend you all go watch it. And he reiterated this fundamental core principle that when people say there's no good evidence, they're fundamentally misframing what evidence is, right? Evidence is data in the context of hypothesis. So if someone says there's no good evidence, you should say back to them, yeah, in the context of what hypothesis, right? There's no good data that there's phenomena that we don't understand. Oh, that's incontrovertibly true. There are phenomena we don't understand. Most scientists would affirm that. Or is the hypothesis something else? And I remember I also interviewed Dr. Beatrice Villarroel in the same series, Talk After Gary's. And it was interesting. Toward the end, I said, what do you want to see? What do you want to find when you look up there? She said, flying saucers. And it was like, oh, wow, a throwback to an old nomenclature for UFOs. But the point she was making is that her hypothesis is that there are not only structured craft, but there are pancake-shaped, flat, saucer-like craft. And if you narrow the hypothesis, you might just find the data you need to, at least as pre-data, substantiate, a probability. And then furthermore, you can calibrate your instruments to detect literally flying saucers versus just anything. And of course, if you are calibrating an instrument, you have to have some sense of what you are calibrating it to find. What is the signature of the object of your detection? And so flying saucers might be one. So we are swimming in data. We are swimming in testimony. There is very strong evidence behind the UFO phenomenon, and it is often lost in a miasma of lower veracity, lower provenance evidence. And so kind of separating the two has been a project that Ben and I have been very much a part of, but doing so with a transparent methodology. Because again, the problem is that things are said, people get excited, they speculate, they start to have beliefs form, or fears and hopes take shape, emotional reactions, and then we chase those to no avail, and then we all go back to the feed and look for the next big statement, right? So it's to break that terminal cycle that we created this site as a public literacy tool, UFOevidence.com, to methodically parse good evidence from bad, and to better understand what makes evidence good. So we'll be getting into that. Ben, let's just look at the recent US government releases. I've got some kind of basic information here in front of me about, I've showed it in the past, the sitting President Donald Trump's mandate to federal agencies to release files related to UAP, and then Pete Hegseth of the Department of newly named War came out in compliance to that statement and launched war.gov/UFO. Let's go over there right now. I think I lost my touchpad, but it's okay. There we go. So this is the U.S. Department of War's UFO homepage. Not user-friendly, very poor search tools, very Spartan. And there's been these two releases of a variety of information. The first release took place May 8th. Gosh, is that 1 month ago? It is 30 days ago. First major public tranche of documents, videos, and images, some historical UFO records from NASA, from the FBI, also Air Force and Aero related videos and reports, some domestic and diplomatic communications and cables. And then the second release took place roughly 3 weeks later, May 22nd. More video heavy than the first release. At that point, that's when the Department of War said that the site had gotten over 1 billion hits. They did their little victory lap on social media, hip, hip, hurrah, see how we've met the public's needs. I will also note that within a day or so of that, there was a call for commentary from the Department of War on these releases, to which they said, there will be no commentary. We want the public to come to their own conclusions, which is a farcical statement because the information released almost universally was heavily redacted, lacked context, lacked attending metadata or data enrichment of whatever the media was, video, photo. There were some interesting and impactful testimonial reports and records, which we'll get into. But to just say, here's a dump, here's a mixed bag, a grab bag of historic UFO stuff, including things we already knew about, including things like the Cometa report, which had been public for many, many years. You go make your own conclusions. You know, I thought that was in disregard to the public's need to make sense of this newly released information. But of course, they don't want to weigh into parsing good, bad, and neutral like we will. So, but yeah, Ben, your thoughts so far on the government releases?
As you said, there's a lot of stuff in there that we knew already. It's just a republishing of stuff that was already in the public domain. No interpretation from the US government to say, what could it be? What was the US government's or the military's professional assessment, given all the information that they had and all the information that they have that they haven't shared with us that would be very useful in substantiating some of these cases. Like, I will note there are certain videos where certain anomalous characteristics that we tend to observe in UAP cases, things like instantaneous acceleration or apparent instantaneous acceleration. It would be a lot easier to judge if these apparent effects in the videos were actually there if we had more metadata from the targeting pod systems that they were recorded with, for example. Like, if we were able to at least know if the object appeared to move instantly like that, did the camera move at the same time? Because that's a claim that anyone can easily make. Well, the object didn't really move that fast, but the camera moved. You're being played, you're being deceived. And for all we know, we are being played. And it would be a lot better if the government would come straight and not just give us things that are tantalizing, but give us the data that we can really work with and make a real conclusion with, and say, like, wow, that's something that the physics community should be paying attention to. This is amazing. But we can't. We kind of just have to make some educated guesses here. We're still a bit in the dark. So yes, it's not particularly helpful. It does, while it piques many people's interest, and it should, I think that's what it's intended to do. It does not actually get us very far in terms of making conclusions about what we're actually dealing with and how we should go about getting our own data as citizens, because we can't rely on institutions that operate in secrecy as a rule, because that's just how they have been established. We can't rely on them to give us reliable information.
Right. Now, the government would push back and saying, you know, for national security reasons, we cannot release information that would reveal sources and methods. We cannot release information that would geographically pin down where this took place. Some of it might be in the airspace of another nation, a war zone, etc. And so that is their kind of perennial pushback. But there's really no articulation of the line up until which they can release information and surrounding context. And so it is very frustrating. Look at this grainy video. It's officially released, but there's no official confirmation of what system took it, what aircraft, what sensor, exactly. So, and I'm sure as a researcher, Ben, it's doubly frustrating because, you know, let's take this off screen share here for a minute. And it's doubly frustrating because what do you do with it as a researcher? How do you go further, right? Like, what is the next step? And so let me see. I don't know if I can pull this up. I did want to just flash this for a moment. Yeah, there we go. Let me just get this on screen here. There were a few pieces of information that I found to be impactful forms of testimony. Let me see if I can. No, I don't think I can get into this. Okay, never mind. But there was this incident of U.S. military personnel observing this orb-like craft on a test range, and it was very, very detailed, a very detailed account. It seemed to be written by a real person, And it does comport to what we have observed in other cases, right? And how great would it be to begin to build a probabilistic statement about what these orbs are, how big they are, how they tend to move, how they tend to react. The problem is that we don't know who this individual was, what agency they worked for. We know the year it took place. Maybe somebody in the chat can drop that orb-related testimony there for us. But and so, how do you take the next step with it? And also, how do we begin to parse testimony from evidence? This was a big need that we saw with the UFOE project. Is often, there's this phrase in the UFO discourse, "Trust me, bro," which is to say, look, I'm the former department head of this, that, or the other. Trust me, I saw this, right? And I want to trust them. And in some cases, I do believe them. But what does society do next with that kind of testimony? In my view, it's a box canyon. There's nowhere to go with that, unless potentially you can corroborate it with other data that does verify some of the meta qualities of the case that they described. Or maybe there can be some sort of Bayesian approach to corroboration of testimony, which is something you have worked a lot on, Ben, and have brought into the UFOE site, which we'll touch on. So, but this is where we need to go beyond just believe it or don't. Trust me, bro, or don't trust me, bro, right? It's not enough. And so how do we break through? Well, the methodology that we've worked to develop is one small step for mankind, or for the public, we hope, in just giving us a model, some sort of a baseline that we can use to hold up against whatever claims are made, whatever impactful documents come out. And that's what we're going to get into next. Just to kind of like finish up this survey of what's been released so far. So in the first bundle of documents, we had 160 plus files. We can take the screen share off. 120 PDFs, 30 videos. We had some NASA spaceflight related material, including Apollo era transcripts, which we will get into because we found that was substantive enough to build a case around and to score that case. In the second release, there were 64 files, 51 videos, 7 audio, 6 PDF, and a lot of repeat content confirmation of stuff we already knew. So, there were a few interesting cases like the Lake Huron F-16 shootdown, which, Ben, do we have a case for that? Because I know we have an Alaska shootdown case. I'm not sure they're the same.
Yeah, we have, that was if I'm not mistaken, 2023. And that
I've got it right
made
here.
the news right away. Allegedly, a Chinese balloon was shot down by US Air Force F-16 in Alaskan territory. We don't know much more than that. It's kind of a placeholder case. But because we had military and government sources come right out and say, yes, this happened, this was a national security incident, and kind of left it open as to exactly what the nature of the object was that they shot down. It remains a UAP case. Not a very good one, not very substantive, but there's enough information there for us to assess what was going on, and that is what went into the case score that you're looking at right now.
Yep, good. And we're going to be building more cases at the disclosed level, this first stage in the case development process. That basically means there's enough substance with which to say an incident occurred. It can't just be one person said something happened, no other confirmation, no other data. There's got to be more than just that. So if there is enough information, we can build a disclosed case. Investigated means that, let me pull up the little tooltips here. It should show up. No? Okay. That basically we have used AI to scrub the internet for as much information as we could, and then we have human verified the accuracy of that information. And then scored is what we're going to get into today, which is using the UFOE beta scoring methodology, which is open to all, fully transparent, to provide a starting lens with which to look at the case. And here you have a case that might have won the day in the mainstream media, or might have been regarded as an absolute hoax. And okay, it has a low case score, but you can see we've already separated witness from evidence quality. And I think that's a valuable step here. Good witnesses. The evidence is lacking. Now, that doesn't mean the evidence can't come out. And we saw, we're seeing in these government releases cases that have been disclosed already, you could say, but more information about them coming out. Will that budge the case score? We will see. We definitely hope to keep pace with that. So, what we got, we did get officially confirmed files, some short videos with a lot of redacted context in them, a lot of black squares. There are some case descriptions, some witness narratives. There is a public portal. There is some provenance for the content, meaning it is officially housed with maybe disclosure of what agency it came from or sub-agency or how it changed hands. But what we don't have are the original raw files, the data regarding the sensors that detected these things, the analyst reports, the professionals who go over everything to make an assessment. We don't have the full witness interviews. We don't have the names of the witnesses or their credibility verified. And we definitely don't have full chain of custody on where this media came from, which means at any point in time, it could be tampered with, right? And, that gets done in government. Let's just be honest about it. And we certainly do not have a very good structured searchable database. I've gone to that website and searched the word Apollo. Do it yourself. Nothing shows up. Well, why is that? There's a case about the Apollo mission. It's a terrible website. It's a terrible attempt at creating a public portal for information. And so that's why we need, drum roll please, UFOevidence.com. We need this website. And I'm very excited about it. And if you're not already on the email list for it, do so, because there are daily new cases coming out. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, we've got new cases coming out every day since launch day last week. We're going to start slowing it down eventually, because we are actually running out of the cases that we've currently assessed and generated. But there will still be regular updates going forward for the foreseeable future, just because there is so much in the public domain and so much still being released by the government that governments of various countries that we've already released on the site, that we can keep going, and we can keep putting this out to the public and trying to poke more people and get their attention.
Absolutely. Great. And a couple shameless plugs here. Please join the power user community over at Discord. You can find that. Let's see. I know where it is. It's in the footer of the site. Discord. Join Discord. Discuss the site, the tools, cases, evidence, the government. Bring it all out. Become part of the power user community. That would be great. Also, there are opportunities to contribute here. So help us improve the site. Get us your feedback right here on the site itself. There are opportunities to volunteer and join the team. We need people who can build cases, do human verification of AI, content and scoring. When I say scoring, AI uses our hand-built methodology to score. So AI is not doing the scoring. It is following the rules that we set, we hope. But we have to check that as human verifiers. So we need people who can do that. And then just generally, we have a roadmap for developing the site into a world-class public literacy tool and fact-checking center as the discourse on UFOs proceeds. So please be a part of that. And also, if you're super inspired, I encourage you to donate. Donate to UFOE. Help us keep the site going. It is expensive to host these tools and to develop them. The world is not free, as I'm sure you know. So we do need that support. So shameless plug there before we dive into the site, how to use it. So let's get going with that. So what Ben and I thought we would do is review two government released cases, one of which I believe is scored, the other is not, and just show you what we have done there. And then turn our attention to a third case, which is not out on the site fully yet. It's not scored yet. Hint, hint, it is. The pie is in the oven, and we're going to pull it out at the end. But you get to be the one to make it from scratch. And we want to get you involved in this interactive methodology that we've developed. So let's climb right in. Ben, any thoughts before we do that?
No, I'm ready to go, except to add both cases are scored. So
okay,
it's been generated, the data has been scoured by AI and human beings alike. We have assessed it, and we've done all that we can at this point, which is to make a decision about what have we got, how much substance have we got, which is what the case score represents.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. And I do see a couple questions in the chat. Good moment if we want to pause for a couple questions before we dive into the methodology and get you engaged in the sandbox. We have a question, who owns the site? Good question. The Human Institute owns the site. That is the nonprofit policy and research think tank for which I'm directing strategy, which is driving forward this project at an administrative level and at a technology and platform support level. So the Human Institute, humaninstitute.org, if you'd like to look it up, that is the organization that is driving UFOE forward. The team operates outside the Human Institute, and the team is composed of inspired volunteers, informed members of the public. So you don't have to associate with the Human Institute in order to help the site. But the site looks this good and works this well because there's an organization behind it, and that was important. Any other questions before we plow forward? I have one person asking, why is my life out of balance? Koyana Squatsy, yes, I saw that film. Why is your life out of balance? I do not know, Chris, but it is worth asking. And there are many reasons why that could be the case. And hey, who knows, maybe this is part of the solution, is to be part of a compelling movement that generates value for the public. So I think that's been inspiring for me, and inspiration is a big part of being healthy in life. One hard part of course, is filtering and rating cases. Correct, I think that's being said from a larger perspective, but I just will add that, you know, we're totally open to how we can make this meet your needs. What filters would you like to see? Should we be looking by country? Should we be looking by craft type? Right? All very possible. So, you know, over here on the homepage, we kind of left the bottom under the case map, which is also a great way to look. Scroll past this. There we go. Yeah, down here. We could have all sorts of categories, all sorts of characteristics that you could search by if you want to narrow down the hunt. So lots possible, and we look forward to developing that. Okay, I'm not seeing any other pressing questions, so onward it is. Let me go over, Ben, to the first case that we want to look at. And actually, I'll just navigate you there so that you can see how to get there yourself. I'll just go to the home page and go to Government Files. This is the page that will bring together all of the cases that are stemming from the current releases by the US government. And so the first one we want to look at is the Apollo 17 case. So Ben, why don't you kick this one off?
Sure thing, Reed. So this was the last time human beings ever walked on the moon. And I saw that this was one of the cases that really got people's attention, because people are watching NASA, people are watching the space program. And as in people's minds, if anyone is going to encounter the aliens first, it's going to be the astronauts, right? It's going to be the people in space. And one of the reasons why this case going up on Pursue was a bit suspect was that a lot of the astronauts' descriptions of anomalies that they were encountering in space were actually easily attributed to cosmic rays bouncing off their retinas that caused them to have, quote unquote, hallucinations, see flashes of light where there wasn't really anything. And I've seen a couple of people commenting on this tranche of releases focus in on that and completely ignore the fact that this isn't really the anomaly that this case is about and why it's on the site. It's got more to do with the fact that during the moonwalk, now this was a team made up of, if I'm not mistaken, 2 former military test pilots, which was Cernan and Evans, and one Harvard-educated geologist, Harrison Schmitt. And one of the very first frames that Harrison, as the team's designated photographer during the moonwalk on that first day of EVA, recorded, one of the very first frames that he gets out of the lunar module, contains this anomaly in the distance, a triangular cluster of bluish lights. I think if you scroll down, Reed, we can actually see this media, because everything that's pertinent to the case media-wise is hosted on the site. That's the second frame taken on the moon during the Apollo 17 mission. Next slide. I think we'll be able to see it. That's the enhanced version. This is almost carbon copy of what's up on the Pursue website right now. But it's that unresolved anomaly, which I will point out. I've been through the live mission transcripts. Apparently, Schmitt didn't notice that he recorded this object. None of the astronauts comment on it, but it is undoubtedly there. And one of the comments made on the Pursue website is that apparently an investigation together with NASA, I assume, has been opened up to investigate exactly what that object was. And the initial conclusion, at least, is that it's not a camera artifact. It's not some kind of illusion. There actually is something up in the sky, which is quite remarkable. It's not consistent with the booster stage of the lunar module, which you can see in several photos and can give you a bit of a shock if you're not expecting to see it, this huge, bright, cylindrical object hovering above the lunar surface. That was there too. This is not what they photographed. And this, admittedly not very substantial bit of information, a couple of photographs, the object disappears in the next frame, make up this case. This is why it is remarkable. And yet it is still something, and we have to treat it as something. There is the beginning of your evidence. If you're going to ask for more information, ask about this. Ask why this wasn't noticed, commented on, why nothing was said about it subsequently by NASA. What are we looking at? I'm sure we would all like to know.
If there's any citizen investigators out there, I'd like to put them on the trail of this a little bit, because I hosted a panel with Mike Gold, formerly at NASA, one of the, I believe, 4 individuals who testified in front of Congress 2 hearings ago, alongside Michael Schellenberger, Lou Elizondo, and Timothy Gallaudet. And I hosted a panel at the UAP Summit with Mike, in which he said, go back and watch it, with a glimmer in the eye, that the currently available NASA records on the website host some truly interesting media that are fully available to the public. I thought that was a little bit of a drop to cue the public out there who want to go look into that. But here we have something. There could be more of this on the existing NASA archives. So interesting, great. So let's walk now, Ben, and I think you have the screen share for this. Is there anything else you want to see on the case page before we dive into the scoring of the case?
Yeah, I do want to point out that there are a couple of interesting comments made in the case transcripts, where obviously the astronauts were witnessing fragments, particles in space, for fragments as in from the detachment of the booster stage of the lunar module, man-made debris, causing apparent flashes of light out in space. But then there are other things that weren't so easily explained. And if you go through the mission transcripts, you will get to several points, and some of those transcripts should actually be there in the media section of the page right now. But you'll get to points where the astronauts are commenting on a tumbling, flashing object that they can't assign to any object that they were familiar with. Flashes of light seen on the lunar surface, which may or may not have been cosmic ray illusions, but may actually have been something. Schmidt was one of the first to notice what he perceived as a very strong flash of light on the lunar surface while they were still in orbit. And that was not attributed to the cosmic ray study that they were participating in at the time. That was treated as a genuine unknown. And that's how it was treated in their conversations with mission control. And actually, at one point, they go through a summary of all of the things they couldn't explain. And there's a cryptic comment made at one point by Cernan on behalf of Evans, who reportedly said, "We've got a tin can with us." Now, what does that mean? We're not given the context to understand what it means when an astronaut cryptically says, "We have a tin can with us in space." Things we would like to know once again. But I think you want to get now read into the case scoring. And this is, if we scroll down to the case scoring, we'll see this is, we'll get through the information about the NASA investigations, but we'll see this is a very simple case where we've broken down for every single case based on what is observable, certain effects that we know from the information that we have currently, effects that are associated, observables that are associated with UAP. And one of them, I mean, the environmental category is quite simply light phenomena, atmospheric phenomena, which includes flashes of light, luminous objects, which we may or may not be able to attribute. In this case, we cannot attribute currently to any known conventional source. And that represents a true anomaly that's measurable. In this case was measured on a video camera. And we have that record. I think if you scroll down our read, we'll be able to get into, so here is where you're actually able to engage with the scoring that we've done. So if you want to see the brief summary or the complete spreadsheet with the scoring, you click and it's published online. So those reference numbers that you're seeing, those go down to the reference list on the original case page. This is your at-a-glance summary of what happened, when did it happen, what did we actually observe, and how have we rated the evidence. Now, in this case, I want to explain to you, if you're not familiar with previous walkthroughs, what these numbers W1 through W3, E1 through E3 mean. The W's refer to witness score. So we're dealing with different aspects of a sighting, a report by an eyewitness. It's human intelligence. And those numbers mean a 3 means they were a small group, including at least 3 witnesses. And remember, this is a score out of 5, so we're sitting somewhere intermediate. W2 is viewing conditions. How good were the viewing conditions? In this case, the object was apparently very far away, but it was in space, so there's no atmosphere to occlude your view. So it's almost perfect viewing conditions. And what is the credibility of the witnesses? We assume because of their training, scientific, military, and the stakes involved in this mission, that they are highly credible witnesses, a 5 out of 5. And other people may contest that. And we would actually like you to contest that in your own opinions, your own comments on the page, and your own scorings, how you think this actually ought to be rated. Like, here's the breakdown. If you want to get into the methodology and understand exactly why everything is done, if something about the spreadsheet and our methodology of scoring confuses you, just go to the methodology page and take a read. There's also a short summary published as a news article. I think you can access news articles by going to the bottom of the website and clicking on news. You can get yourself up to the basics in like 10 minutes. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Quick walkthrough.
This one in the middle right there. Yep. Ben, you wrote this just a couple weeks ago. Great. So this takes you through all of it. All the 6 effects, and I think the 34 sub-effects. 43, sorry. Keep going, Ben. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes. So that's referred to the fact that we've got, if I'm not mistaken, 7 basic effect categories that get broken down into 43 observables, 43 characteristics of UAP. and UAP encounters. If anyone has questions now about how the scoring system works, or they want to go back to the sheet and go through it piece by piece, please ask now, and we can run through that
the
now.
YouTube chat, ask any questions. I'm looking at it right in front of me, just to scroll through the 43 sub-effects. And so you can see on the Apollo case, we chose this one first because it's so simple, right? It's basically got, I believe, one sub-effect identified, which is environmental. Is it environmental? Well, why don't I go back to the spreadsheet and find
4.7.
4.7. So you can see SE 4.7, light atmospheric anomaly. And so basically we've got witness. W1 is the number of witnesses from 1 to mass sighting, and on a scale of 5. We've got W2, which is witness conditions or environmental conditions for witnessing, which in this case, very high. And then W3 discusses, I believe, the quality of the witness themselves, their verified credibility as a capable observer. And this was a 5. And so I'll leave it off there for you, Ben, if you want to continue on.
Yeah, and then when we get into the evidence quality score, E1 through 3, now we're dealing with corroborating evidence in addition to eyewitness testimony. So we'll accept human intelligence as a kind of evidence, as a valid source of information, but we want it to be backed up by some other kind of corroborating information, any other kind of data that can give the proof that what this person claims is really trustworthy. Because, like you said, Reed, I think earlier, we want to believe and we want to trust those credible sources, but they have to deliver some kind of evidence. It's like that in the court of law, and it's like that in science. It has to be done. So we first ask, is there any kind of instrumental or sensing data that can back up that, oh, you saw this? Can we have some information about it? And this can go from very simple to very complex kinds of data. And currently, we are not looking at complex kinds of data in the UAP discourse. We are looking at best, information about luminosity, whether or not there was abnormal background radiation. Very rarely do we get the actual measurements, but it's at least something, right? And all of these numbers mean different things in the context of different categories of effects. So we also consider physiological effects, effects on human bodies, effects on human minds, and that has to be assessed differently from when we're observing a purely kinematic effect, something flying around. So those numbers mean different things.
These 5 anchors relate to physiologic effect subtypes. So these would not apply in the Apollo case because that's a different effect category. It's environmental. But just, for a quick illustration, 1 through 5, it basically, accelerates the evidential weight of this one first aspect, which is instrumental data.
Yes. And then treated as separately from that, we have visual records. So this is a little bit of an arbitrary distinction. A camera is surely just another kind of sensor, but because it's just by far the most common kind of corroborating sensor data, and it's almost in every case necessary. It's the most essential kind of sensor data. Do you have a picture? Do you have something that the eye can relate to? And what is the quality of it? And considering especially the day and age in which we live in, we've gone from doctored photos to anyone can create something that looks believable on the face of it, but it just isn't so. The minimum is we need to know where that video came from. If we don't have metadata, we at least need a reliable provenance to even begin to move up the quality of a visual record to something believable. It's not enough to just have a video. We need to know, well, who recorded the video and with what, and where was that information hosted? If it was digital, where was it archived? Who archived it? That goes into the consideration of this score. And now is the time, I think we should point out, this is a rough tool. Really, we need a scalpel, but for beginners' purposes, we need the hammer of a rough scoring just to get things into easy boxes that we can categorize and sort them. What's good and what isn't even worth our time. That is what we are beginning
What
to
demands
do
the
here.
scalpel? Because there's not many scalpels available. And there's a lot of case histories, and some of them are lacking 99.5% of all of the information that does probably exist. So there has to be some triage. And I mean, this is it's a starting model. It's almost like a baseline to be iterated. And that's our invitation to everyone, is to get your hands dirty, get in the sandbox, and help us learn what has to be nuanced to make this as accurate as it can be, given the forensic nature of what we're doing here, which is these are the cold cases of ufology, right? These are decades ago. Some of the individuals are no longer alive. We know the information we really need is not going to be forthcoming. So, yes, first a hammer and then a scalpel. And we're going to get into also how this tool, though it is a starting beta level tool and it is a hammer, can inform the design of the scalpel in the sense of getting original data, original multi-sensor data of UAP in real time, and then having that live on the site, and really reshaping our notions about what's possible in terms of the data that can attend, for example, a video. Could we have, yes, a video enriched by multiple sensors and all of the data they've collected, all calibrated together, characterized, disclosed, published in a white paper? You know exactly what camera, exactly what passive radar, exactly what electro-optical sensor, what gimbal camera was used, and because it was designed for the purpose of UAP detection. How exciting would that be? So instead of picking up the bits and scraps of history, we can actually begin to design the systems of tomorrow. And that is something that the Human Institute is working on right now. Sorry, go ahead, Ben. I just get excited.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited too. And the final evidence anchor we look at is the reporting, because we didn't just get this information out of nowhere, right? Someone collated it and archived it potentially and presented it to us. And who was that initially? Who gathered the data? Who presented the data? And that matters in the same way that the reputation or credibility of a witness matters. So it goes anywhere from, I don't think we will ever get a case where there is no report. We got it from somewhere, but did it come from, for example, a news article? Maybe we don't even know who the author of that news article is. Well, that's not worth very much. But if it comes, for example, these photos coming from NASA and also being republished by the Department of War helps. Those are, we will take them for now to be credible sources, mostly because we don't have anything better. And that is also part of the problem. Ideally, you would have multiple scientific institutes who would be specialized for collecting and presenting this kind of data. And we might trust them even more. But those kind of initiatives are just getting off the ground. So yes, for now, we will take NASA as a credible source. We'll take the US government as a credible source, as long as they've provided enough for us to make that judgment. We know it's a real mission report. We know it's a real photograph. We know who took it. We know where it comes from in this case. So we'll make it a 5 for now.
Let me go back to the summary spreadsheet for the Apollo 17 transcripts. So you can see E3 is given a 5. These do move in whole steps, by the way. But as you'll see in the case lab, you can you can move that decimal one's position, do 0.1 steps. So we can nuance these more. So Ben, this is great. So I think folks have a decent idea of how we're scoring across 6 effects, within which are 43 sub-effects of UAP. We're looking at witness quality, WQS, evidence quality, EQS. And those numbers are basically generated from witness W1, witness number, W2, witness conditions, W3, witness credibility, and then E1, which is sensor data, 2, media, visual media, and 3, official, well, not necessarily official, records. We'll just say records and investigations. And so it's very deep and rich about how we generate these numbers. This is just the summary spreadsheet. Let's go back to Apollo and just wrap that one up, being a super simple case for us. I'm gonna go down to the case score. Okay, so just environmental, E4. Let's go to the complete spreadsheet for a minute. This shows every potential.
Looking at.
Okay, great. Yeah, why don't you carry on from here, and then let's go to the other case.
Yeah, so for here, we're just going to scroll straight to section 4. But as we go, note all of the different ways in which we can break down and categorize cases. And as you explore UFOE, I encourage you to explore by effects and look at all of the different observables that we deal with in UAP cases. An example like Colaris is a case that is extremely complex, where people's bodies were affected, where people allegedly died, where we were seeing dramatic responses from people psychologically, staying awake all night, getting out weapons, lighting fires. That is not a typical reaction. That is not a reaction that someone would have were there nothing unusual going on. So it matters. And it matters what the Brazilian Air Force recorded with their cameras. Light phenomena. In some cases, reporting astounding movement characteristics on some of these objects, even physical beings reported, or at least alleged. And that is something I encourage people to go explore. But here, if you want to, this is the template that we use. This is how we score case. And everything hopefully is very well explained. The effect is summarized. There is a brief summary from the data, the references for which you can find on the case page and are referenced to with the citation numbers next to the commentary. And all of the anchors also explained why was it a 3? Why was it a 4? And if you ever get confused, you can return to the summary case data on the actual page, and you can see, well, it's a 4 because of that reason. They're in the case score section. If you scroll down, just scroll down a little bit there.
Yeah, right here.
Everything is summarized. Everything is explained. There is no need to be lost. If you do have questions, you can head over to the Discord and ask us, and we encourage you to join, engage us on this. Tell us what you think, make comments, ask questions. If anything is not clear, we want to make it so. We're still working on this side. It is, after all, still in beta.
So, folks, what this means is that when someone says, yeah, what was up with the Apollo case? The Trump administration just released something. It's probably nothing, right? I mean, what is it? Well, here you go. Go to this section, and with one little thumb scroll on your iPhone, you can tell them exactly what the evidence present in that document was. Summarized for you, shared on the internet. So there it is. Now you know how to find the key evidence. Let's go over to the second case, and we'll do this at double time. This is the other case that we developed from recently released government documents, and I'll just zoom us to the halfway point, Ben, and then you can take it from there. You can see that there are 3 different effect types present.
Pardon me, Reed, I'll stop you there. This was actually a old version that we have since edited. I think if you regenerate this case page, it should look different. Otherwise, I'll share my version.
Oh, okay. There we go. Much better. Okay.
Very simple case.
Very simple case.
Not much to work with. If you look at the case score, this is an even weaker case than the previous. And the previous was kind of among the best for the first tranche of UAP releases. Not not going to spend too much time on this, except to say that this is another case that grabbed a lot of media attention because of the alleged sighting of a saucer-shaped object by a German prisoner of war. He was Polish, but he was a prisoner of the Germans, Władysław Karaszewski. And he later immigrated to the United States, and it was in, I think, 1951, during the Leveland wave in Texas, which is actually on the site as well. He was, for one reason or another, compelled to tell what he witnessed, and that was investigated seriously by the FBI, which is the only reason why it is on the site, because it was part of the Pursue release, and it is based on a genuine FBI investigation. And the entire case score is just based on what he observed: an object supposedly in a German military encampment lifting off and taking off. And allegedly, it also caused problems with the engine of the truck that he was driving, but that's not entirely clear from his testimony. But that's one of the cases from Pursue.
Mm-hmm. So as you see a case like this make the rounds on the media, you know just how strong it is or is not. And just as your literacy in the tool goes up, you can see that witness is more evidentially strong than evidence. Why would evidence even be strong? Go to the brief summary, and you'll see that number 4. It's because there was an FBI investigation. That's pretty much the reason why there's any evidential strength, right? And we're not calling this case out as uniquely important. There's so many cases with an official investigation of the testimony of one person. But now we know how to regard the impactfulness, the weight of such a case. And I think over time, we added case numbers here as a quick reference. So CO79, I mean, maybe that becomes the vernacular in the UFOE Discord for a case that is, a guy says the FBI investigated, there you have it. Like, it's a CO79 type case. But may the public not be fooled in any regard, in one way or the other. I mean, nor should this be totally debunked. I mean, this individual claims in this amount of detail that he saw what he saw. Okay, in the time we have, Ben, I know we wanted to do some live interactive with everyone here, so hopefully you're all still with us. I want to answer one quick question from Carolyn. Who will be providing the scoring? You shall be providing the scoring. Well, you shall be providing one of the scores. Within the scoring, we have 3 different layers planned. The first is the provisional beta score of the system itself, which we're describing to you. The second is an aggregation of verified users of the site, engaged users who are seriously scoring these things themselves. We hope to aggregate those in time. And then last, we hope to gain an expert lens on the case, either an individual who is an investigator of this case historically, or one of you, a citizen investigator who would like to get under the hood and seriously analyze, what FBI office? Was it one guy on a Sunday who investigated this Polish prisoner of war, Krasuski's case? Or was it the field office of a whole city, region, state? Was it, the national level FBI? Right. So get in there with a scalpel and begin to nuance this even further. So 3 levels of scoring, but you're very much a part of it. The scoring, again, is done by AI with this methodology that we have developed. And the data is inputted by the team. So we have a small team of case builders who build the case. They input the data. And then there's another layer to that, which is actually case scoring, which takes a little bit longer, and then is human checked, to answer your question, Carolyn. So with that, Ben, let's head back to the home page, go back to government files, and let's go to the 3rd case here. And you tell me what I should display, because I know you had a sequential plan here.
I'm gonna take this one up.
Okay, take it.
Okay, so you should be able to see it up on screen now.
Yep, give us 1 second. We'll get that on screen. There we go.
Okay, so this is the case that I want the community, everyone who is here on the show participating today, to help us score. I'll be fully transparent. We have recently, me and the case building team, scored this case. It already has an assessment, which I'm not going to share with you until we get your opinion, because the goal of UFOE is ultimately, and in fact, right now, to get everyone engaged in analyzing the evidence for themselves and coming to their own conclusions. So our scores are not final. We are not experts, but perhaps among you, there are experts or people who know better than us, who have some other insight, some other perspective that is better than ours. We want everyone's opinion, and we want to build this up to a stage where we can have experts in those respective effects that we have mentioned, people who are highly qualified to comment, to also add their opinion and also consider what you think. And at the end, for us to come to a consensus about what we are actually looking at. Given all of these cases for which we have some information, we can actually come to some kind of conclusion, right? And this was coming from this case right now. Let's get started. This case was coming from the first tranche of Percy releases, and it involved an incident that happened in October 2023 that was apparently recorded by a Reaper drone operating over the Aegean Sea um, near Greece. And we will skip over all of the details for now, but encourage you to come back to this case and get all the information for yourself. But this information is coming from U.S. Central Command. It's coming from a special operations unit as well. And our information, as far as we can ascertain, this video that perhaps you've seen, we will run through it briefly, was recorded using a Raytheon ANDAS4 pod, which is a multi-spectrum sensor. It can record simultaneously in visible and thermal spectra. So it is a 2-in-1 sensor. It gives us a visual representation of what you're looking at, and it gives you data in the near infrared and other spectra that help you to determine what you are looking at. That's multi-sensor corroboration. That's one of the scientific basic standards in science, in detection, that we want to meet right off the bat. And that looks like it might actually be what we have here. So we don't just have the mission report, we have some data to back it up. And I want to focus in on, you can tell me if everything's still displaying correctly
Yes,
here.
we can see it. Yep.
So here's your grainy infrared footage. And again, we don't have the metadata to say, is the camera moving or is the object moving? But as far as we can ascertain, for the time being, there seems to be an object luminous in the near infrared. It is a solid object. The mission report also attests it is a solid object, apparently circular, either quite small or very far away, over the ocean, making 90-degree turns while moving at speed of about 80 miles per hour. So not exceptionally fast, but if the visual record says these things were making 90-degree turns, and the drone operator and supervisor were saying this object appeared to be making 90-degree turns, then let's take them at their word for it, because they've produced some proof, and say, wow, well, if that's the case, the G-forces that object is experiencing must be incredible. If it is some kind of unmanned drone, its performance capabilities incredible. I'm not aware of any drone platform that can do that. How is it doing that? It's a very good question. So this is a already very interesting case witness testimony is taken straight out of the mission reports. In this case, all of the mission reports are on the website already, and you can scroll through them at your leisure. But we will skip to the case lab. Reed, I think you've demonstrated the case lab in previous videos. Oh, wait. I'm not going to show the case lab just yet, because what I actually want to show first is the blank scoring, and we will get to how the case lab works in a moment.
Sounds good.
Okay, give me a moment.
And while you're doing that, I'm trying to grab a few people off Twitter to join this live scoring, because I know everyone's abuzz about what the government does in the third group of releases, but have we even parsed the field on the first and second? So you pull that up, I'll throw this out. Folks, questions, put them in the YouTube live chat. Questions about anything, by the way, outside this process. We will take a few questions toward the end. And are you bringing that up on your screen, Ben, or am I doing that?
I'm doing this. Should be shared now.
Yeah. Yep, we'll bring that up.
Okay, so is the case sheet visible?
It is.
Okay, so you've seen this before. This is our case scoring sheet, and we will scroll right down to what we've actually observed in this case, which, as far as we can tell, there are 3 different specific effects present that we can observe that are corroborated by some kind of evidence. And the first of these is apparent instantaneous acceleration, which we define as abrupt extreme acceleration that exceeds known inertial or structural limits without observable buildup or transitional motion. So if not instantaneous, then near instantaneous motion, change in velocity from this to this, instant starts, instant stops, which defy the motion of any aerial platforms that we are familiar with and that are actually quite common in UAP reports. Now, what I want to know is, having seen the video, and hopefully if you've had the time, read the mission reports, how should we start scoring this case? So from the very beginning, we've got testimony in the mission report and the video, apparently multiple 90-degree turns. Where are we starting? How many people were the direct witnesses to this event? Like, can we get people up in the comments now to tell us, like, would it be 1? Are people familiar with how drone operation stations are? Has anyone looked it up? So I can tell you that at the bare minimum, we have to have the drone operator and the drone supervisor who's live on radio, and other drone operators who might be in the same room, right? So I would say minimum it's a 2. I'm just going to wait for that to load up. We have that many witnesses. Have we had any comments yet, Reed? Please just shoot them to me as we go.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's a little small on my screen to see, but what sub-effect are you editing right there?
This is instantaneous acceleration.
Okay, so this is
sub-effect 6.1.
6.1. Okay. And your question to everyone was, are you doing W1 quantity?
W1, how many witnesses? Is it 2? Is it only 1?
And folks who are viewing, I put the link to the case page in chat. I'll put it again. And again, this is in the YouTube live chat. And I think, Ben, you're going to have to answer some of these questions for folks since they're probably seeing this for the first time.
Yes. So I'll let people also see all of the drop downs as well, if possible. So it goes from a 0, there were no eyewitnesses, which might be the case in some very rare incidents, all the way up to a mass sighting from multiple independent locations. So we start with a 0, you go to 1, which is a single witness, 2, which is a very small group, 2 to 4 witnesses, 5 plus is a 3. Anything where we're looking at around or over 20 people from a single location is what we consider a mass sighting. Then when you have multiple independent locations to corroborate that, then you have an even higher score. That's the highest score that we support currently.
It's interesting. I'll just note, filling this in myself right now, and of course I have access to the spreadsheet like you, Ben, but others don't. If you just put in 2 to 4 witnesses, perfect conditions of professional, strong reputation, the case score is 1.7. Interesting kind of baseline understanding of a kind of a trust me kind of bro situation of a claim or an allegation undocumented without corroborating data. So 1.7.
You can put it even higher. Yeah, it's a 1.7.
Right.
If we were to go with that
for
scoring.
one sub effect. Right. And now that's just for one sub effect of 6.1. Now you'll also just, because I know we didn't touch on it, column D on the screen there is called probative factor, which is the kind of evidential strength of a sub effect as it relates to the nature of the effect itself, how easy it is to misinterpret, mischaracterize, or spoof or fake, or how technically derived it is. So if it's impossible to technically corroborate it, it might have a lower probative effect, whereas instantaneous acceleration is probably going to be dependent upon a sensor capable of detecting such acceleration. So you can see 1.2 is the probative factor. Now in the case lab, which is where we're going to go next, you can drop that. You can diminish the probative weight of 6.1. You can make other sub effects that are less technically derived higher probative, because again, just because we can't technically prove or corroborate it doesn't mean it's not real. So keep going, Ben.
All right. Have we had any, even like one vote in the comments to represent what the community thinks this anchor should be, just to get us started? Because we still have 5 more to go.
Right. I don't know if folks are going to know enough about the case to even know the number of witnesses. So I think it's sufficient for you to go through this, and kind of we can ask the question. I'm not seeing any. Right. So someone is J4ZZCat. Drone missions are usually recorded, so it is likely that additional imagery and intelligence specialists reviewed the video. So. Right, unlikely to be raw data that no one looked at that just went into a spreadsheet somewhere. So let's keep going from there.
Okay, so at least one person thinks like we're dealing with at least a very small group of people. It's not just one person. So maybe we'll stick with
Right.
2. Regarding event conditions, has anyone been through the mission report to see what conditions were described, if they were described at all? So as far as I can tell, conditions were pretty clear. It's not obvious exactly how far away the object was, no estimate given, but let's assume it's pretty close to perfect. No mention of inclement weather, open seas, open skies, and we don't know who the original reporter was, but the provenance of this is it's a special forces operator. It's a special forces unit, and we will get to this later. This is not the province for this, but it is coming from an official source. This is CENTCOM data and reporting. But let's say we've got a military operator, and we would like to believe this person is trustworthy and credible, and after all, they did record it on video. Let's say it's a 5. But now we get to the data itself, right? what kind of data are we dealing with? Well, we have a multi-spectrum sensor that can capture visual data and near-infrared data, and I assume thermal data as well, but that's not been disclosed.
Ben, can you increase the text size in your spreadsheet there? I think some folks are having getting grainy video. Might be hard to read. Maybe 2 steps forward if you're able.
How's that?
Yeah, we'll see if folks can see that better. Let us know if that works for you. Okay, keep going.
Okay. And let us now just consider, before we even consider that we have a video, we've got near infrared spectrum, as well as, I presume, visual spectrum. This object was seen with a pair of eyes, with an ordinary camera, as well as in near infrared spectrum, if not other spectra. So we have one sensor. It's not no data. It's not a visual estimate. It's not even just a simple visual record like a screenshot of a radar system, a screenshot of a video. It's the actual video, which at least amounts to a partial data set from a verified sensor. And we might even be tempted to go up to a 4 and say, well, it's more or less the full video of this encounter, right? Maybe it's a 4. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say for now it is a 4, because what it is not right now is a confluence of radar data, infrared data, in addition to the visual data. It's just at least one other kind of sensor that can back up this observation. We'll leave it as a 4 for now. And the visual record is a single video. We don't have metadata per se. We have the mission report, which has information about the incident, information about the sensor, when, roughly where, and unfortunately, a lot of the other information that is normally displayed on the readout, that's been redacted, but we know where it comes from. So we will say it is, at the very least, it's a single video with known provenance. Let's say that brings us up to a 4. It's not a 5 because it is not multiple devices recording from different angles. It's just one. Put that there. And the quality of the reports. It is from currently a single source. So it's being disclosed by Pursuit, and we know it's coming from US Central Command. And that's, as far as we're concerned, pretty high, almost right to the top. Sorry, Reed, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you, Ben. And folks are seeing your screen share better now, too.
Okay, perfect. Let's say it's a 4. Now we've come to a section that we haven't discussed yet, Reed. Actually, we were holding off on this for quite a while.
I think we should probably save that for next level, like next level in the corroboration of evidence. So but I think folks are following. They're tracking that we're on 6.1, instantaneous acceleration. We've documented the witness quality. We've documented the evidence quality. Are there any other sub-effects we need to document?
They are, but for now we can see that our case score is already pretty high, and this is an average of everything that's a weighted average of everything that's here capped at 5. So already this case is looking pretty good in terms of substance, almost at the top even. So now the next thing we have to look at is, well, what else happened in that video? One of the 5 observables characterized by Luis Elizondo is this quality of low observability. The objects apparently don't want to be seen, if we can put it that way. Evading detection, evading sensors, difficult to record. More difficult than you would expect for an ordinary object, as if they're sort of designed to produce grainy footage, designed to be difficult to track on the sensors, the kinds of sensors that we have. That is an observable. Difficulty observing is a kind of data in itself. And what happens in this case is that at some point, while still on camera, the object seems to spontaneously disappear. Target lost. The camera didn't go anywhere. The object just seems to vanish. It doesn't look like it dropped into the ocean, although maybe we don't have a good enough video quality to assess that, but it disappeared. Observability went to 0, like that, after so many minutes of observation. Well, that's an effect. And to save us time, since no one has said otherwise here, in this case, these anchors are going to carry over. Nothing needs to be changed. It's a simple copy and paste operation here. We still have the same number of witnesses, the same viewing conditions, the same original witnesses. And it's the same here regarding our sensors, because if it's a multiple sensors in one, it's dropped off of multiple sensors at the same time. Would be different if, and very interesting, for example, if something dropped off the visible spectrum, but remained detectable in thermal or near infrared, but we don't have that kind of data. That will be interesting, and that will be something to note in a deeper analysis later. And then finally, the third observable here, apparent non-aerodynamic lift or propulsion. Go to that mission report, scrutinize the video. As far as the drone operator can tell, this object is circular, doesn't have wings, a structured fuselage, exhaust, control surfaces. It just flies. Again, let's be cautious and say, maybe it's something more prosaic that we can't really see very clearly because the quality of the video is just not very good. Maybe this object was much further away than the drone operator could estimate. But as a starting point, it seemed to be a circular object. It didn't seem to correspond to any known drone. Remember, this is a drone operator. Drone operator knows how to recognize other drones. Drone-to-drone combat, emerging field, right? Certainly not an aircraft of any kind that we are familiar with. Not an F-16 in the theater doing 90-degree turns at 80 miles per hour, right? Very unlikely. And it's the same deal. So we'll just carry over those scores. And hey presto. We now got a case score for this effect of 5. And because there's only one effect, so here's the breakdown out of the 6 effects. That is our final case score. It's a straight 5. In terms of substance, it maxes out, how would you call it? Maxes out, it ticks all the boxes. Maxes out our scale.
Right. There's an additive effect here with enough different corroborating features present. You know, they are additive and they kind of move something to the top of the threshold. So, okay, awesome. So we have 2 sub effects, 6.1, 6.3, instantaneous acceleration, well, observability cloaking. We've got the same witness 1, 2, and 3 anchors for each. And then we've documented, it's basically a 4 for each of the E1, 2, and 3 anchors. So,
yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Ben.
And then 5.
Okay.
5, no, 4, 4, 4. Yeah.
Okay, 4, 4, 4. Okay. So here you have it. Now, I'd like to move us to the case lab. Is this case available in the lab for people to play with?
And I'm going to bring that up if you don't mind.
I just put a link to the case details you could pop that into a separate window and, you know, peruse it, scan it to your own satisfaction to feel if you agree or not with those anchors.
Please. So now the thing I almost jumped into prematurely, the case lab. And the case lab contains the actual score. Ta-da, there it is. If you scroll
There's the
down to
pie
kinematic
out of the
effects.
oven.
Yes, nice and fresh. And here you see all of the normally fixed options in the scoring spreadsheet that we work with now sort of become something you can play with. So to go a little bit behind the scenes here of how it works, say, for example, you look at evidence quality, witness quality, those three anchors we were talking about. How do they get broken down? Do they contribute equally? In the case of witness score, the quantity, conditions, and reliability of witnesses, as a default, get rated equally. But what would happen if we were to put event conditions as the most important factor, make that a 75? Or maybe we want to go 90% reliability of the witness. We want to know if we can believe this person. That makes a difference. Now, in this case, this might not be the best case to demonstrate it with because everything is so high. But the reason it's so high is because of these probative factors. Because generally, when you're looking at anomalous kinematic effects, it's something that is quite hard to spoof in a genuine video, which we take it this is. But if we were to say, hold your horses now, I don't think that we should take this too seriously. Maybe there is some other viable explanation for there appearing to be some kind of abrupt movement. Maybe the camera's moving and we just don't have the metadata to determine that. Well, then we can be more neutral. Maybe we can be a bit skeptical even and say, well, this is actually spoofable. That's up to you. And you can do that. The same for the other effects that we observe. We can put them low. We can put them very low if we want to. You can be skeptical. And then it becomes possible to see how important these other modifiers are to determining the final score, right? Do we really care that there is a official report or investigation, or do we only want to know the data? Put this to 0 and see what the visual records and everything else tell us. And if we like, we can lock that at 0 and modify these to our liking, make them equal. Now it's only about visual records and instrumental data and nothing else. Forget about the report. And if you change your mind, hit reset. If you like what you've done, you can go up here, maybe reset all, and you can copy to your clipboard a link that it should, if I'm not mistaken, permanently capture that case lab score modification that you have done, and that can be shared on social media, that can be shared on the Discord, or
correct.
with
I
your
believe the
friends,
link
or anywhere you
retained.
would like to share it.
It's retained in the link itself. It's not retained in the UFOE system.
Yeah.
So if you spend the time to adjust the case score and you want to save the URL, paste it into a Word doc or someplace, and or just post it to Discord, you'll have it there. I'm going to also, somebody was asking, where did we obtain the documents? How can we demonstrate a clear chain of custody? I'm putting the link to, I believe this is the document from CENTCOM. And, you know, this is where a citizen investigator could take it a step farther, which is declassified by Major General Richard Harrison. Well, does anyone want to go make sure that Richard Harrison was indeed Chief of Staff at CENTCOM in 2025? You know, so, and track down, I'm looking, maybe we can well, anyway, I can't share this on the screen, but folks can click that link and open this up and see the document itself.
Okay, so I think what would be nice at this point is, I mean, just to let people know how the case lab works.
Yeah, maybe
To end off,
if somebody wouldn't mind, who's been adjusting those toggles per their appetite for the strength of each variable, hit that copy link button in the panel itself. You should see that in the upper right, share. That's not just a social share button. That's actually a capture your case score button, and then paste it in the chat. Hopefully, YouTube will allow that.
Please, we want to see your scores, and if you don't share them, they disappear. But if you care to share it on the Discord, for example, that can become a basis for a community scoring on UFOE. It's been set up that way for your engagement.
Right.
And by the way, you can jump over to another case straight from within the case lab, by the way. So if you want to go back to Apollo 17 and start playing with those scores right now, you can do that.
Excellent. So there's going to be many opportunities to play with this and more demos to come. In the interest of time, I know we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark, Ben. And so I just wanted to reflect with you as we begin to kind of turn the dial down. What are we understanding as investigators into this process of scoring cases? What are we learning about what makes evidence strong? What makes evidence weak? What is the evidence we need?
I think what I've ascertained so far is that it really matters how many different streams of data you've got. It obviously matters greatly in certain cases when you have a lot of witnesses. In some cases, it's very case specific, right? Mass sightings, it's unfortunate, but usually you do not have a scientific survey team at the ready to record multi-spectrum data. You've got lots of people with cameras, and that still counts for something. Sometimes you have very credible witnesses among those. My mind goes back to the Lubbock lights, where part of the staff of a university was some of the eyewitnesses to this, one of the most noteworthy mass sightings in history, certainly, for which there was photographic evidence. But the photographic evidence backs those up.
Let's go to my screen share here. I've got the Phoenix lights. Oh, we don't have a screen share for this one. We lost it. Okay, that's okay. Well, you could pull up Phoenix lights for yourselves in the case lab there, and that just populates all of the data on that. You can actually open up unused effect categories that are not represented, and you'll see the probative factor. For me, it really comes down to the effect observed. I mean, if instantaneous acceleration, as it has been reflected upon by others in the field, one of the most substantive, unspoofable, non-prosaically explainable effects of UAP, if that's it, then that's indicative of the evidence we need. We need incontrovertible proof that instantaneous acceleration has occurred. There are cases in which UAP have been estimated to travel, in one case, 44,000 miles. I've seen above 90,000 miles per hour. I've seen reports of cases. I haven't actually seen the case itself that alleges 1,000 G-force effects based upon speed, mass, and the direction of turn. If that were to be detectable with multiple sensors that are fully disclosed, as we were seeing in the Aegean, the Greece case, we have the sensor is essentially disclosed. We know the make model number. We know what that sensor can do. That is tremendous, right? Versus something on board a ship detected something that did X, Y, or Z. Did it? Was it calibrated to detect that? Have we deconflicted other known prosaic phenomena that it might not be able to weed out or account for properly. So that's just a huge one. And as I look at all these 43 sub effects, I think the environmental is critical. Environmental sub effects, and so that's a case for getting into the field soon after an incident and collecting technical readings on vegetation, ground imprints, radiation levels, and there are cases in which that has been done. Much kudos to the investigators.
Minot those cases, including some lesser known ones, Transain-Provence landing in France. And to your point about instantaneous acceleration, yes, this is a big focus because it implies new physics. It is, I think if we could get the physics community to really zero in on that observable, it should interest them. In fact, I have spoken to physicists before who are vaguely aware, and they want to get involved. They want to be excited, but they also want that strong data to work with. Otherwise, they're going to shy away from it. But were that data to be shown to be there, were we to have enough weight of evidence, all of these cases coming together, meeting the minimum standards, it would blow something wide open that I don't think we'd be able to put the lid back on.
Exactly. And we're going to, toward the end of the hour here, Ben and I are going to talk a little bit about some efforts underway to advance that capability. Before we do, and I can't, I guess, share my screen right now. Okay, we're going to try to get that going again. But Ben, maybe you could share your screen. Just go to the case lab, pull up anything. Pull up Colaris just for fun, because that Colaris is a complex case with aspects of mass sighting, with media capture associated with it. Let's just pull up Colaris, and I just want to open up all the effect types, all 6. And as we gotta bring that screen up. There we go. Let's open up all the effect types, whether or not they apply to the case. And there you can see the probative factor. You can see the sub effects. You can hover over each and get an explanation for them. Now, in my view, even though effect 6, kinematics, might ultimately prove UAP are both real, active, pervasive, and operating at scale, nationally and globally, the other effects are super important. And, the psychological effects, super important, but so difficult to demonstrate incontrovertibly an anomalous psychological incident, given how subjective it is. We don't even understand the way our own psychology projects consciousness natively, let alone under anomalous conditions. And you can see the probative factor is very low. But in my view, all of these need a path to validation, that somebody has to pick up the challenge of psi and psi anomalous effects. And even if maybe the goal is not to incontrovertibly prove it to the scientific community, right? But maybe the goal is to inform the public that extrasensory perception is a demonstrable capability of sentience, of our consciousness, and that it is influenceable by each other, therefore in inference by a non-human intelligence, by the intelligence operating UAP. And in fact, in many cases, there's so many cases of paralysis, of reported loss of visual sensation, other things, communications, messages, ideation occurring simultaneous with a UAP observation at distance, right? So there's so much to indicate that there is an interaction taking place. Now, the goal may not to be to activate, the union of concerned psychologists. That may be a step too far. But the bulk populace who needs to understand that there is a psychological component to this, and that they could be engaged, and that they have to find ways of engaging in some kind of shielding or psychic barrier generation. That's important. That's an important contribution to the public. I know that steps us outside of the scientific validation, but it is what it is. Psi is really difficult to demonstrate, not just anomaly, but baseline functioning. And therefore the probative factor is so low. And many cases, many abduction cases, many interaction or communication cases that are purely at a psychological effect level are going to have massively low case scores. And we are not, as a team, debasing those individuals, those witnesses, those cases in any respect. We're basically saying, as a public tool, that individuals and institutions globally can come together to agree on the presence of anomaly. It is just very difficult to accord a high case score to purely psi cases. But there is a route to validation. Just wanted to put that out there. If we go over to physiological effects, we lost Ben's screen share. I have to reselect that. But you can see SE 1.1 through 1.9. Now, some of these are high probative. If there were medical reports conducted within necessary time periods, validated by credentialed physicians, validated by medical institutions and the labs that captured those results, goodness knows, what could we validate at the physiologic level? The medical effects of UAP are heavily surmised to be a big component. I've heard Dr. Gary Nolan talk about it, Ted Rowe of UAP Med, those at the Unhidden organization advocating for action on that level, and even medical coding. So when an individual self-reports at a hospital, there could be a medical code to reflect some of these anomalous physiologic effects. But this is a call, in my view, E1, to the medical professional community to both be ready to capture lab results and to conduct clinical evaluation, to capture that data, to protect the anonymity and the credibility of the reporting person, and find a way that, circumventing or acknowledging HIPAA laws and other things that are in place medically, how can we get that critical data out for public review, right? Could there be published medical reports with anecdotal cases? Could there be small cohort-based longitudinal studies with multiple individuals who check out at a high level in other ways in terms of everything from comorbidities and other medical risks to use of substances to strong psychological health, a way to study individuals who are having physiologic effects. I know I'm getting long-winded here, but my point is that all of these sub-effects deserve investigation in different ways, and they do need to be validated or invalidated. And it's a question, how does that take place? I might have lost Ben's audio, or I can't hear Ben.
You can hear me now.
Sorry. There we go. Yep, we got you. Yep.
Reed, to your point, I'm aware of at least one initiative that has set up a kind of multi-anomaly sensor in a box that's been distributed to households of people who opt into this as a research project. And what they found so far is very interesting. It speaks to exactly what you are talking about. People are able to report their physiological symptoms, what they perceive, like, oh, I saw an orb, and then I had a splitting headache. And at the same time, my anomaly detection box was registering a spike in background radiation. Gamma levels were higher than they ought to be for no reason that we can currently surmise. That is data corroborating unusual observations coming together in all of these different chains of effects to say that, yes, there's something going on. Once-off observations, no. But when you have this kind of data quality, multiple angles, all saying the same thing, or saying different things, but different things of different nature going on around certain people, the supposed experiencer, contactee. Why do certain people seem to be a nexus for UAP activity? Why should it have anything to do with individuals, with people? We just don't understand. And what is going on around them?
We're hearing reports of federal agencies using data out of companies like 23andMe to look for potential trends, patterns in the population of anomalous encounters, right? Why can't we do the same? There are so many opportunities for biological measurements to be taken parallel to anomalous events, and also for technical collection to take place alongside reported psychological or physiologic effects. And now I'm thinking of environmental sensing, like you're saying, Ben. Could devices be put in the house to measure loss of power or fluctuations in the localized power grid? Because loss of power is something that some abductees have reported in encounters. I had the Tedesco brothers, John and Jerry, on Emergent a few months ago, and toward the end of the show, they dropped a great idea to be pursued. Wide open opportunity for someone with app development capabilities, the ability to write software to read the sensors on a modern iPhone or Android device, because those devices have multiple sensors on board that could detect potential anomalies environmentally. And so there's a developmental pathway. I know there's a company called Freakin' Aliens, Freakin' without the G, and the name is somewhat in jest, but not really. And I know the founder of the company, Richard Clutie, out of Harvard, formerly or currently possibly in the Galileo project, and he's developing a sensor suite that can perform environmental sensory detection for automated systems. So basically, when your McDonald's 8-legged or 8-wheeled drone delivers your hamburger in 5 years and trundles up to your front door, it has the ancillary sensing of the environment to know that it's not going to get hit by another autonomous Amazon delivery drone or something like that. This is the dystopian future that we're rapidly going towards. So, but I know Frickin' Aliens is doing environmental sensing work that is multi-purpose for UAP detection. And actually, a lot of the groups that are doing UAP detection work are co-purposing their systems to do drone detection, to do environmental sensing for all sorts of use cases in the marine environment and the aerospace environment. There are groups talking about putting UAP sensor suites on board civilian and military aircraft. The idea has been floated about putting such a device on the hull of commercial seacraft, because there's a large shipping craft going around the world, crisscrossing the oceans daily. Why don't we have some sort of acoustic sensing device on the bottom of the hull of all those craft picking up information, right? And so there are these initiatives out there. They're well worth supporting, and I'm very excited about them. And I think there's an opportunity to synergize their findings, because of course these are by and large companies, right? And so how does data get back to the public? Is there a public interest effort to find a way to support data sharing and integration, and to have a centralized system that presents that data, however it needs to be structured, to the public, so that you could go into an online portal or launch an app, look up at the sky, point your camera at a series of lights, and have instantaneous corroboration or invalidation based on multiple multi-sensor detection companies that are feeding their data in, so that oh, that is a drone, or whatever, which is going to be even more important because the skies are going to be very crowded in the future with autonomous systems. So there seems to be a critical moment, kind of a Rubicon we're crossing, where there is a need to understand what's in the skies above. It's not enough to look up and see a light anymore, even if the light appears to take off or disappear, right? Visual confirmation is confirmation. It has to confirm another layer of data. And in my view, that's technically derived sensor data. And so if we don't have that, crowded skies, AI generated fake video and photo, a government that continues to stonewall or obfuscate, other foreign governments that could infuse the space with low provenance media, right? And then a phenomenon that is evasive, that can choose to appear or disappear, that can function heavily in one swath of territorial airspace and be absent in another, right? And so it's not enough to stick your telescope at the sky and stare at the light either. because the light may not come back tomorrow. And it might show up 1,000 miles away where there's no such $1 million optical system. And so we need a coalition-based concept that accounts for the pervasive, unpredictable nature of the phenomenon, operating in all the domains of the Earth system, all the way down into the maritime domain, because this is the nature of the intelligent interaction that's taking place. So just to summarize here, look at those sub-effects. There's 43 of them. Each of them is a path to validation. They all present different challenges, but I can easily see projects arriving in the citizen space, for-profit, non-profit, informal, cohort-based, based not on money or even other incentives, but simply a group of intelligent people going after it, chasing it. And I can see pathways to validation on many of these sub-effects. So we're learning a little bit about what it would take to provide incontrovertible proof to the public. We're definitely putting things in their place, so to speak, when it comes to government releases. So when the government comes out with an amazing thing, is it amazing, right? Or is it not amazing? And now we can start to know why. We've got multiple actors in the space. We've got governments in the plural, and with action by this current administration, with films like those coming out this week in Disclosure Day, you never know who else in the world might have something to say and how accurate it may be, right? And what data stands behind it. So this is, again, UFOE, another tool, a lens through which to see what is happening, what is coming out into the public, and to put it in its place. We've got the corporate actors, the defense companies, they're active. We've got citizens who have cameras and other sensors themselves, reporting and alleging all sorts of stuff up there. And then we've got the phenomenon, which can apparently choose to appear or disappear at will. But although I will say, UAP have been detected by sensors. And so it's not to say that they can just become invisible to us. It's possible, but it's also possible that we are gaining some level of technical parity with the phenomenon so that it cannot operate in purely clandestine fashion in the air and in the ocean. And if it can, we have to prove that it can. We have to test it right up to the boundaries because the phenomenon is collecting on us. So we need to be collecting on it. And the capabilities are there. They need to be tested in the live field-based environment and proven or disproven as viable. And ultimately, we need to understand what's happening in the Earth system domain to track it, monitor it, and ultimately find ways of negotiating its presence with our own intentions for secure airspace and sea space. That's part of the imperative. I want to take a quick moment to answer any questions that are in the chat, and then I know we're past the 2-hour mark, and the marketing people tell me not to go too much farther past that mark, otherwise people stop watching it till the end. So I think we should start to wrap up here. One question from Kimono: when people click on the share button, why, I'm not sure the question, but why is a community score not displayed? Well, the community score, and this answers another question down the way about contamination by bad scoring. We are going to have to find a way of bringing in the scores of verified participants who are educated in the site. Maybe they take a training, right? Maybe we can verify they are who they say they are in terms of, they're not double submitting or something like that. But we have to find a way of gathering together as a community to credibly score these cases and aggregate those into a community score. So again, Discord. Ben, why don't you put Discord up and we can chat through that platform, because that's really where the conversation is meant to continue. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? I will note that the Pursue website is extremely impossible to search. In fact, when you hit this, when you search a phrase, it actually searches the entire Department of War. So you will definitely not find what you're looking for. I can't imagine that was totally unintentional. Ben, you're muted.
Sorry. You got to scroll down. There's a specific search bar for just Pursue files.
Okay.
If you go at the
Thank
top,
you.
you'll get the whole DOW website. You just got to go down. It's actually easier than you think. That saved me.
Okay. I'm not seeing that search bar myself, and I'm on the site now. I have to say I'm a little suspicious based upon aliens.gov, and I'm not totally sure this agency is acting in our best interests.
That is, I think
That is a
that's a fair
question.
assessment.
That is, yes. Intent has yet to be determined, not of NHI, but of these HIs over here, who seem to be dumping grab bags of information on the public without any commentary or context. So, yes, it's a challenge. But we have this tool. We have a discussion space. I'm not sure if you're sharing your screen, Ben, but we definitely want to get folks into Discord. And we have different chat spaces for different threads and themes. We will be continuing to track the releases through the Pursue program. And if there are cases you think are substantive enough to warrant a case page and a score, put that in Discord. It's a very small team doing all this. And I want to just acknowledge Ben, Matt, Lorray, Brandon, Alexander, Roberto, and Levy, the team behind UFOE. But just keeping the site up and growing technically is the bulk of the challenge. So we really need the community aspect to step in and begin to advise on how to shape what we present to the public. We do hope that UFOevidence.com can be a go-to place for sharing information. So if somebody has a question about a case, that should be the best place to share. If it's not, if you're not happy with it, totally open to that feedback and look forward to that. Okay, there's a question here from Bex. How can this be worthwhile if Palantir exists, which we know has had billions invested in the Maven smart system that can isolate UFO UAP events before a human ever see it, building ontologies? I want to just acknowledge here that my conviction is that the governments of the world, especially the large ones, probably have the systems and the technologies that we dream of already in place every day, capturing and collecting, right? I don't doubt that. And we're not trying to create or replace that. What we're trying to do is create a civil society counterbalance to the capabilities of national security states, things like departments of war, right? So that we can begin to keep them accountable. And I think that's well within reach. So if the government or the US Department of War says, well, UAP appear on the West Coast, but less the East Coast, is that true? Well, if we had detection capabilities, a mesh distributed network of sensors nationwide, we might be able to hold them to account, right? If they basically come out with built cases, crafted cases, intending to shape public perception, right? We can pick them apart down to the T and understand exactly what's there and what's not, and tell that to the public. That's going to be necessary. And ultimately, we have to generate an intelligence picture on the phenomenon that is publicly accessible. Otherwise, the public, their understanding will be inevitably shaped by government narratives, probably. And can we rely on these agencies of the world, these defense agencies, to tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Right? They do not act and respond to the letter of the law. They do not. And so that's demonstrated. You can look back in the history of how these states have operated programs against their own citizens, other nations, their citizens, in extremely destructive ways, to know that they are operating outside the letter of the public, consensus-based system. To some degree, I understand their cagey worldview and their modus operandi, right? But we need a modus operandi. And currently it's totally scattered. It's basically we follow, we're led around like a dog on a leash, chasing the next dog treat of some piece of information that looks exciting to us all. It's not enough. We've got a couple more questions rolling in here. What about providing an MCP interface for AI agents? These days, research often starts with AI tools, so exposing the system through MCP could make it much easier to query. Great idea. Thank you for that input. We don't currently have plans for an AI system operating on top of UFOE because it is so handcrafted and we're trying to walk it carefully into the public, limited number of cases. But how amazing would it be to have an AI, a bot or some sort of interactable AI agent that the public can use on the site, querying UFOE's validated data, but also having some kind of API that other teams, groups, researchers can query. So it's a great idea. Well, excellent, everyone. I want to acknowledge all those who are here. Thank you so much for those supporting Emergent and the show and myself and the Human Institute as well. They all deserve support. Yes, and I look forward to getting more great guests on the show once my calendar opens up. I am a little bit hyper overbooked, as you can imagine, but thank you for staying with me in the background. And believe me, I am as committed as ever to helping humanity intelligently respond to the presence of this unidentified intelligence that we are interacting with, and to do so in ways that prefer the human interest, that keep humanity central in this exchange, and that protect the valuable assets and qualities of the human race that I know are present. I know you know as well. So thank you for being on Team Humanity as we push the ball forward, and stay awake and alert. Things are moving. My gut sense tells me this will be a summer of events regarding this topic, and by 2027 and 2028, we are going to see some form of basic affirmation from some federal or official body, I should say. But my goodness, we had better have our heads screwed on straight, our toolkit primed, and out there in the public, helping people think through what is disclosed in using all of the logic and reason and evidence available to them to do it. So, Ben, fantastic to have you on Emergent finally, and a pleasure working with you over many months.
Thanks, Reed.
Great to have a true scientist and researcher on the team, and you've contributed enormously to everything you've seen, everyone has seen here today. So thank you, Ben. And with that, everyone, I'll see you at the next episode of Emergent, and hopefully prior to that on the Discord server for UFOevidence.com. Take care, everybody.